Hey, welcome back to the Millionaire Choice Show. Today, we're going to have a really fun time with Zack Boothe. He's a 32-year-old millionaire, real estate investor, and success mentor, and he's host of the Driving for Dollars podcast. Now, this guy, when you hear his story, you're going to love it, but he went from being broke to making over $1 million a year in the real estate investing space, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about how he did that, and he's got some real treats for you at the end of the show today on how you can get some of the information he's got available for you. So stay tuned. And Zachary, thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I love your story, and people hear me say this all the time on the show. I love the stories of people who grew up broke, just like I did. And, we're not born with a silver spoon. A lot of people believe millionaires are born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and it's just not true. 80%.
Some of them are, right?
Yeah, some are. But, according to the Millionaire Next Door, a book, one of the biggest research books on millionaires, that 80% of the millionaires out there are like first generation millionaires. And I think Dave Ramsey also just did a research book too as well. It was Everyday Millionaires before. I think he's repackaged that book. But kind of the same statistics are out there, like first generation millionaires, people that grew up in not wealthy families, but decided they wanted to build wealth. And I just love hearing the different stories, man. And so share your story a little bit with the future millionaires listening to the show.
Yeah. Well, I kind of go back to what made me want to make money. Started when I was young. So I grew up in Salt Lake. I grew up in the Western Valley there in Salt Lake City, the lower income area. My grandfather was an alcoholic and gambler, died with 2 teeth and a gun to his name. Pretty rough history in my family. My dad's side, my dad grew up asking for food from his neighbors to feed his younger siblings. Met my mom in high school sweethearts, and we're married. And my mom came from a little bit more of a stable family, hardworking, blue collar family. And anyways, they did a great job. I have 4 siblings, but we were raised to work. We were raised to be independent. I have 1 sister and 3 brothers. And we were raised, the boys, at least my sister's pretty spoiled, rightly so, with only daughter.
Hey, I know how it is. I've got 3 daughters of my own, and I had 2 boys, and then I got 3 girls. And that first girl, I'm like, how in the world were girls born knowing how to act that way to get me wrapped around their fingers so quickly?
Yeah, it's crazy. I have a little girl that's going to be 3 here, or no, she is 3, soon to be 4. Pretty soon. It's crazy. The difference between my little boy and little girl. But anyways, my dad raised us to work. He worked his butt off always, very frugal. And he was hard on us. It was his way or the highway. And I will always be grateful for that. I will always be grateful to being raised to learn to respect others and to respect your authority. And, my father figure, and he was fair, but tough. And, we worked after school. At 16, he cut me off financially. He said, "You're a man now, you'll take care of yourself." And he covered food, housing, and that was it. So, from the time I was 11 till I was 15, I worked for the family lawn mowing business. After school, after work, weekends, we were mowing lawns and picking weeds and fixing sprinklers and all that stuff. So did a lot of that. When I was 15, I wanted to go do other things. Plus what they moved, and it kind of became inefficient for me to go back to Salt Lake when they moved 45 minutes north where all of our clients were. And so I took up a job doing finished carpentry and framing. By the time I was 17 and I started my first business, I had done handcrafted cheese. I did taxidermy. I had worked in a wood mill. I went to Nova Scotia, Canada for my last job. My junior year summer, worked 80-hour work weeks. And I did that because my dad wouldn't co-sign a loan for me to get my first truck. He said, "If you want a truck, you'll get the cash if you want it bad enough." And so I got the cash. I did it. And at that point, I was sick of working for other people, right? At 17 years old. And I remember when I was 14, I was mowing lawns late at night with my dad, and mowing lawns in these giant mansions in these neighborhoods up above the Capitol in Salt Lake. And, where all the Jazz and the Larry H. Miller, the owner of the Jazz, lived. And I used to wave at Larry H. Miller as he'd drive by, this, billionaire. And I'm like, man, why am I? And I remember asking my dad, I was like, Dad, why are we mowing their lawn? Like, why are they rich? Why are we not rich? And I remember my little brain at the age of 14, I was already trying to comprehend why. What is it that makes them different? And I asked my dad, and I would bug him, and he's like, Zach, I don't know. Ask my rich friend. So he told me to talk to his friend Clint. I was like, Dad, Clint's poor. What are you talking about? Right. And he's like, no, he's like, he's just cheap, but he has a lot of money.
He's not poor. He's just cheap.
Yeah. I was like, he has a beat up truck, and I was like, he doesn't even have a nice truck, Dad. And he's like, I know, he's just cheap. And so anyways, I called up Clint. I was serious about it. I called him and said, Clint, what do I do? And he gave me Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the book at 14. So I read that book at 14, and my little brain started working. So at 17, I was hungry to go and do my own thing. And part of it was financially, I was trying to play high school basketball. I was trying to take girls on dates, and I was trying to, I'm a big time outdoorsman. My family, my mom was pregnant with me when she shot her first deer with a bow and arrow. Right. So like, we're always in the mountains together as well. And that's an expensive hobby, very expensive hobby. And, now I get to hunt in 6-7 different states. I'm going to hunt in Hawaii with some investor friends of mine next month. Like, I get to have a lot of fun and like a ton of adventure now. But I was like, how do I have all of it? How do I have my cake and eat it too? And so I wanted to have my own business. So at 17, I went to Nova Scotia, Canada, worked those 80-hour work weeks with, I had the cash to buy my truck, my first cell phone. And I had to go with Cricket because I didn't have credit. That's the only carrier that would take me. Bought this little candy bar phone, and the iPhone came out the next year. That'll age me. And then I bought a bunch of cleaning equipment. I couldn't afford everything. I went down the street, a construction site, and got a paint bucket, cleaned it out, and used that, and did whatever I could. But I was pretty much out of money. And so I went door to door from my parents' house. I'd walk to the rich neighborhoods and go door to door, and till I could get some jobs. And I'd walk back and drive my truck because I don't want to use the gas. It was that tight. And I grew that business for almost a decade. And, that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial story. That's kind of why I was where I was at. Great parents.
Yeah, there's a lot of good details in there. I want to touch just a minute. Like, that sounds pretty wild about your dad as a young guy, just trying to have to beg for food to feed his siblings himself. So how many siblings did he have?
He has 2, and then a half sibling, a half sister. So his parents got divorced, I think, when he was about 10 or 11. And it was very bad divorce. My grandfather, alcoholic, gambler. Kids are going hungry. My grandma was having to work. There was a lot of resentment there. So when there was that separation, and then my grandma ended up getting remarried. So my dad's stepdad was a Korean War vet, saw action, I'm sure PTSD and everything else that comes with it. Very abusive, very angry, very hard on my father. Father felt like he was betraying his real father. How the whole
there's
family.
A lot of psychological stuff that goes on in families. It sounds like it was a recipe for it right there.
Yeah. So when my stepdad came in, or my step grandfather stepped in, he was able to provide financially at least and feed the family. But for those few years between probably 12, 13 to about 15, my father stepped in and would borrow food and work and help his mom feed the rest of his younger siblings. And, I look at my father and I look at what he went through, and there's more that he happened, but it's very personal. And, I look at who he is and who he's become from how he was raised. And I have nothing but love and respect and admiration. And, he knew no other way. And it's funny now, he's not even like the same person. He's just a soft grandpa, and, and our kids are like, our spouses are like, what are you talking about? All these stories of Steve. He's a gentle giant, he's super built, big dude. And he's like, you didn't know Steve when we were kids. He was definitely rolled with an iron fist, but it was so good. It was so good because there was a lot of tough love. There was a requirement to take ownership and responsibilities for ourselves. He drove me nuts, but he'd always yell at me. He says, Zach, I don't want excuses. I want results. And it drove me nuts, right? Like, cause I totally felt like I had a fair excuse, but it made me resourceful because I knew if I went to my dad, it was the end of the world, you know?
Yeah.
So
I
I
got
had to
that.
figure it out.
Yeah. I picked that. I probably didn't pick that up really that hard. My parents had great work ethic, but I think the word excuse kind of got scratched off of my vocabulary was when I got my first job out of college. I was working at a manufacturing plant, tool and die, been at tool and die, and great family owned business. And there was something I didn't get done. And I was talking to the president of the company and he's like, why isn't this done? And I started telling him all this stuff. He goes, I don't want excuses. And I'm like, oh, and the light bulb went off in me at that moment. It's like, oh, like he's right. Like I can talk about all these reasons why I didn't get something done, but it just still, the bottom line is I still didn't get it done. And in our minds, I think even in our children's minds, that's what happens. We want to have all these reasons why it's not our fault. And it is. And I go through that with my kids all the time because I'll tell them why didn't you have this done? Oh, I didn't have time. I said, well, did you have time to do that, and that? like the reality is we always make time, myself included. We always make time to do the things we want to do, but unfortunately, the things we want to do are not the things that we should be doing or the best for us, and definitely not for somebody who's trying to build wealth or become successful. Because there's so many things that just kind of steal our time from us, and we don't realize how precious and important that asset is. That's one of your most important assets, your time. What you can do with it. Well, you turned the corner there somewhere. How old were you when you started turning the corner from being broke to making some money and getting ahead? Like, it sounds like 17 was a big turning point for you. You said you read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's kind of like the Bible on building wealth for a lot of people.
Yeah. It was a very influential book to me in my life. And, at 17, I started washing windows and I did well. I had my first employees at 17. On my 18th birthday, I went and got my first business license and got insurance and workman's comp and everything that I could get when I was 18. My dad wouldn't even sign those papers and be a partner with me because he didn't want the liability of it. Like, he wouldn't even sign those papers. So that's what I did for my 18th birthday. So I get the larger contracts of banks and credit unions and so forth. So I was very much invested into it. My senior year of high school, I actually quit playing basketball because I was so excited about entrepreneurship. I was so excited about the success I was having with my business. I actually wrote off a lot of work release hours with my own signatures for my own work hours and got credit in school for it. And I fell in love with entrepreneurship. And, when I didn't have housing and children and wife, I was doing well. I did that for a couple of years and put away like 10 grand. I actually put away like almost $20,000. I had 2 vehicles completely paid off, had a couple employees, and then I decided to serve a Christian mission. So I actually ended up going to Sao Paulo, Brazil for 2 years. I learned Portuguese and dedicated 2 years, paid 10 grand to go do that. So wiped out most of my savings, put my business on hold and came back from that experience, fell in love with Brazilian people. I actually have a bunch of Brazilian immigrants that work for me. I sponsor them and I love them to death. I ended up marrying a Brazilian girl. But Brazil has a special place in my heart because of that. But I came home from there, immediately went to work and really pushed to build that business. And throughout the process, I was dealing with immigration for my wife. I was dealing with trying to go to college. I was dealing with trying to grow a business and trying to scale that, making mistakes along the way. Ultimately, from the outside looking in, I was super successful. I had a business generating about $500,000 a year in sales, but my profit margin was maybe 10, 15%, very, very minimal. But then I brought on a partner to make the profits even less. And, I remember the day my son was born, 7 years ago. And I remember 7.5 years ago, I remember, how am I going to pay these bills? At this point, I had dabbled in real estate. I had bought a duplex and was house hacking my second investment property. And I was trying to get into that space of financial freedom. So trying to invest, but I was just struggling to really make it. I just felt stuck. And it was so extremely frustrating to me. The day my son was born, it was supposed to be the most beautiful day of my life. And it was, but all I could think about is, how am I going to pay the medical bills?
and I was mad, right?
Oh, dude. And I was mad at myself that's what I was worried about. So I was mad at myself because I was worried. You know what I mean? Like, it was hard. And I was like, man, like, I was so frustrated too, because it's like, I want to be more. I've been pushing my whole life to be more, and I'm not. Like, this is the moment I'm supposed to be who I'm not. Like, my family depends on me. My wife believes in me, and I'm failing them. I just felt like a complete failure. I really felt sorry for myself, and I really wanted to change something. Yeah, that was really the big turning point. I was very much paycheck to paycheck. I had really no net worth 7 years ago, but that moment, that pain was a major driver.
Yeah. And you were how old then? You were said 25, about 25?
Yeah, I was 25.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because that's right when I made my millionaire decision was at 25. And I'm finding, there's kind of like there's different moments in time, different reasons people have done. I've had people on the show like JV Crum the third or, Jeremy Newsom, who's one of my favorite guys. These guys were like getting into investing or thinking about becoming wealthy at like age 5 or 6. There's some catalyst that happened to them where they're like, what is this? I can't get a candy bar. I'm broke. My family's broke. What's wrong? Why can't I get a candy bar? And they determined to be different. For me, that happened at 25. Sounds like for you were kind of like from 17. It sounds like you were kind of dabbling with the concept, but at 25, it seems like that was a real big catalyst for you then.
The big thing that happened to me. So I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that put me on this path. It got me to become an entrepreneur, but it was the only education that I got. It was the only financial education that I ever invested into. And looking back, hindsight's 2020. I learned from Tony Robbins that I had a major limiting belief. I would tell myself secretly all the time, you are stupid, so the only chance you have is to hustle, which helped me because I worked really damn hard. I put in a lot of hours, right? And that thought served me for a time, right?
Because I was a good driver.
It was a driver. You're dumb, dude. Sorry. God didn't give you a brain. And so it also became a roadblock because I struggled to retain information, because I wasn't the best student. Like, I know that I am not the highest IQ person in the room at all times. I know for a fact I'm not, right? Like I don't necessarily feel like I have learning disabilities, but I struggle, right? I learned Portuguese. I'm fluent. I can learn, but I know that it's hard. It's hard for me. And it is probably hard for everyone. I just feeling sorry for myself. Right. But I finally got to the point where I was sick and tired of just hustling and not really seeing results and making all the mistakes myself. So when that moment happened, I was like, okay, something's got to change. And it took me 2 years to find the path and get on the path that I'm on now. But for 2 years, I started washing windows. And instead of just washing windows and working as fast as I can with no headphones or anything to get in my way, I had headphones in my ears at all time. And I was listening to books and I was listening to podcasts and I was studying and I started investing into coaching, tens of thousands of dollars. And I started pouring into my success and my understanding of what I needed to do and who I needed to become to find the success that I was looking for. Because work ethic I knew was not an issue, but the work ethic alone wasn't enough. And I was like, it's been 10 years of grinding. And it's like, the bigger I got, the less money I made.
That's
right?
Great.
And I had to change something.
Yeah. Well, you got so many principles in there. I mean, like, work ethic's a big one, right? So I picked that up from my parents, and that's such a good foundational item. I talk about that as millionaire key number 1 is you got to develop strong character. But, the whole concept when I was on my first job, some of the guys would always tell me as a young guy, right? You got to work smarter, young man, not harder. And I'm like, well, I think you got to do both. You got to work smarter and harder. So you got to invest in yourself, the educational side of it. And it sounds like you put those two things together. So you had this good foundation from your parents, and then you added this, secondary item, which is this intelligence, and what I love about what you said, right, was, I'm not that smart. And I think a lot of times people think that you have that the millionaires or people that are wealthy are geniuses. And personally, I've not met a genius millionaire yet. Not one. Like they're
too smart for their own good.
Yeah. It's like, they're just average people who are just following the process, right? Like, it's not like, and that's what I love about your story. You're like, hey, I ain't that smart. My IQ's not 130, 140. I'm just an average Joe who learned a few things, invested in myself, worked really hard. And, here I am making $1 million a year. And that's pretty good, right?
They let you in on a little secret.
Yep.
I never tested my IQ because I'm afraid of how low it's going to be. I'm terrified. I don't want to know.
It's probably a little higher than you think it is, but not as. Yeah,
that's what I tell myself. See, I can tell myself that, and I don't, I don't have to test it. It's great. It's
always stay humble, right? Always stay humble. So, well, let's talk about your real estate deal, right? So you, I think you told me in the pre-show, when you got into real estate and started, obviously rolling, you ran down to Florida. Was it Florida? Is that where you picked up and ran to?
Yeah. So it's, I did this challenge in Florida to show people how possible it is, right? So the strategy that I show on that 40-day challenge is what got me out of that rut, right? And so my journey since really 2016 till now has been insane. I've gone from a broke window cleaner to making $1 million a year to helping other people become millionaires through the same process that I went through. Right. And I went and did a challenge to show people exactly what it looks like, an over the shoulder look, because seeing is believing, right? Being a part of it is so important, because if you don't have a massive belief in something, if you don't really believe, if you're very skeptical of a process that you can make money with it, you're not going to give 110%. You don't give 110%, you're not going to have results. And you can be like, see, I knew it was too good to be true. I knew I wasn't going to be successful. And you spiral downwards. And so I was like, how do I inspire my students? How do I inspire my followers? How do I inspire them to have a massive belief in themselves that they can go, oh, Zach's no one special. Zach has work ethic. But like what he's doing is not that hard, not that complicated. I can follow these action steps and have results. And so I took $1,000, flew across the country to somewhere I'd never been. When I picked Florida because it was nice and warm in January. And the goal was to turn that into the average American income in 40 days. So my goal was 40 grand in 40 days with just $1,000 to start. And, in that time frame, I made $93,000 in my pocket. Basically, what I was doing was finding deeply discounted real estate and passing the opportunity on to another investor for a finder's fee. No debt, no risk. I didn't have to buy these houses. So I made 93 grand cash. Like it was crazy, right? But I'm doing this all the time, but I was very happy with the results I got. I was very excited. I was very humbled. I got very emotional. I prayed that God would give me opportunities to show people, and he came through for me. And I also was able to pick up 2 rentals. So 2 of the properties they were such good deals, and I had blown my goal out of the water. I was like, shoot, I'll just keep them as rentals. And so I've got 2 rentals that I picked up from that challenge with about $110,000 in equity, meaning if I sold them, I would pocket $110,000 after paying off the debts or the cash that I put into them.
Yeah. And that was 7 years ago, roughly.
That I did this challenge. I did this challenge about 11 months ago is when I ended
it was 11 months ago.
Yeah. So I did this challenge recently just to show people how possible it is. But my story of learning how to do this strategy, it's called real estate wholesaling. I did my first real estate wholesale deal in April of 2017. So about 6 years ago. Yeah. So it's not very long ago that I learned about it. But like I said, 7 years ago, I heard about this. I was listening to these podcasts. I was listening to people talk about getting into real estate investing with no money. And I was like, that's too good to be true. BS, it's not possible. And people are waving $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 checks as a finder's fee. I was like, there's no way. And then I went to a gentleman's house. And the main reason I was so skeptical is like, okay, is it possible? Probably. Could you con people out of their equity? Could you convince people to sell their houses at way too, low and take advantage of people? Sure, you could do that, but I'm not going to do that. Ethically, it doesn't sound right. Like, I don't want any part of this. So I heard about it, but like completely backed away for the longest time.
Skeptic. Everybody's a skeptic, right?
I was a major skeptic. Yeah. I was terrified of being dishonest more than anything, right? Taking advantage of other people for the dollar. And then I had something happen, right? And everyone talks about find a motivated seller, find someone that you can help, and that you can help them by giving them 50 cents on the dollar. It's like, well, that's a lot of help, right? And I'm washing windows for this extremely wealthy gentleman. His name's Stan. And cleaning his giant mansion, got talking to him, found out he's a real estate developer, right? And this was the end of 2016. And I'm like, holy crap, like, I want to talk to this guy. So an hour and a half conversation, hearing his story, how he became financially free. What are you doing? What did you do? How can I do it? And he was just the sweetest guy, shared so much with me. He had 2 multi-million development projects going on worth tens of millions. I don't even know, worth a lot. And at the end of the conversation, I was like, man, if I could just get 2 rentals this year, I'd be so excited. And he said, oh, that's convenient. I got these 2 properties I don't want to deal with. I haven't collected rents in 4 months. They got deferred maintenance, and I don't want to deal with them. I have an agent that wants to list them for me, but she wants me to deal with the tenants. I just don't want to deal with it. If you'll buy them from me, I'll give you a really, really good deal. I said, okay. And I'm like skeptical. I'm like, yeah, really good deal. We'll see. And he pulls out a piece of blank white paper and he's like, okay, let's write the purchase price. I was like, don't we need like a contract? I'm like trying to get him out of, talk him out of signing an agreement right there. And he's educating me on the process and how there's an inspection period. I go to like, he's teaching me how to do the deal. Right. And he's like, okay, so you're going to take this to the title company, this piece of paper, and you're going to make sure there's no judgments or liens or anything else. And then you're going to talk to a real estate agent and make sure you're getting a good deal. You're going to comp them. And he's like going through the process. He's like, and then when I get back from vacation, we'll close on them. Okay. And then I was like, okay, well, I don't have money. I don't have the ability to get $500,000 in debt for these 2 properties. And he said, oh, no, I'm going to finance them. I'll be the bank. How much can you put 10% down? So he wants, $50,000 down. I'm like, I can give you a couple $1,000, and he's like, okay, that works. I'm like, holy crap. So he basically just teaches me and educates me and hands me these properties. I found out that I have well over $100,000 in equity. I ended up turning around and selling those properties a year and a half later. I wish I would not have done that. Yep. Right. Knowing what I know now, wealth is in holding. But anyways, I turned around and sold them a year and a half later for $130,000 profit.
Yeah.
And a light bulb, right? Like it's real. Like there's people that will trade convenience for price. It's not people down on their luck. And that's what I did the 40-day challenge for, to help Zack 7 years ago, to go, no, it's real. It's legitimate. You're serving, you're helping people that want speed and convenience over price. And you get paid a lot of money to do it. And it's a fulfilling and wholesome business that can completely turn your finances around.
Yeah. Good, man. That's good stuff. Well, there's so many principles in that you just conveyed. Opportunity comes to the prepared. Opportunity, if you're looking for it, you were open to it. It took you a little while to get there. Obviously, there's some God's blessing on that, I think, for you.
Amen.
Your heart and your mind's in that place. So I think when your heart and your mind is in the right place, God can really step in and get active. And I think that's more on who you are as a person. I'm a big believer that God's not going to give you something that's going to destroy you. And you also, the amount of wealth you can build is kind of limited by your integrity and what you can handle. And so, if you're in good shape spiritually, you're going to have more runway than if not. But your heart, the big thing is positive. Like, as well as I do, mindset's where it starts. You went from being a broke mindset going, this is how things are, this is how I live, to like thinking about something else. And then after the mindset shift comes the knowledge, and then following the knowledge comes the action. And you get, and you really start getting moving in a direction. And it sounds like, you and I follow the same blueprints, like, hey, 25, I don't want to be broke. I think I can be rich. Let me figure out how to do it. I don't know that much. I'm kind of stupid, but I still at least took the first step. And then once you take that first step, you may or may not get success, but you're willing to take the second step and then the third step. And then the next thing you know, you're 32 years old, you're a millionaire, and you're making $1 million a year. That's pretty good. Like you were actually far ahead of my schedule. I didn't hit those numbers for quite some time. So you're a overachiever, I would say.
Well, thank you. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and question my sanity, and it's never easy, right? But I think that so much of our fulfillment as human beings is challenging ourselves and growing, and we don't grow unless we're challenged. So it's kind of like this weird paradigm, this weird experience that life gives us of, okay, I'm unhappy because I'm not progressing. And it's like, okay, I'm progressing, so I'm happy, but it's hard because you have to struggle and have pain to progress, right? If you want to have a fit body, you have to be miserable first to then have health, right? If you want to have money, well, you have to invest your time, your effort, your energy, your brain power, right? Blood, sweat, and tears. And then you can have wealth, right? It's, I believe how God wanted it to be, I guess. I'm going to ask him why. I don't have all the answers, but it just seems that is how life is supposed to be. After that experience of meeting that gentleman, and then my mind was open, right? I met Stan. I have these properties that I'm going to make over $100,000 when I sell them. I put a tenants in place to rent the properties with an option to buy them from me. So I know that I'm going to make all this money, and I'm like, I hadn't actually capitalized, but I knew what a good deal. And I was like, man, if I could just get more good deals, that's what I need. Like if I can get properties at 40, 50 cents on the dollar, I'm going to be very, very successful, right? I can pass the opportunity off for a finder's fee and get tons of cash, or I can cherry pick my favorite ones and build a rental portfolio. I can flip them. It doesn't matter. When you get stuff at 50 cents on the dollar, it's really hard not to be wealthy.
Yeah, you can. Right? You got opportunities. Yeah, and you're learning through that whole process. I think it's really interesting, and I talk about this for a minute because you go from you shift when you're building wealth. You shift from a small mindset to a more lucrative abundance mindset, and you go through phases of that, right? So I think as a kid, I was cleaning curbs, picking weeds, and washing concrete for $3.35 an hour, and I always thought, man, if I could just make $4 an hour, man, my whole world's going to change. And I made $4, it didn't change. And I made $6, it didn't change. I made 10, made 15, nothing changed. And when I had my engineering job, I was making about $45,000, $47,500. Which, we were living on it, had our first kid, had a little house with $500 a month house payment. And I was looking at changing jobs, and my wife started praying for $70,000 a year. And she's like, I think you're going to make $70,000 a year. That's what I'm praying for. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. I'm going to change jobs, make, 50, 60 max. And I did change jobs, and I did not make $70,000 that year, but within 2 years, I was over $80,000. And then I think the year after that was over $100,000, and continued to see that grow. So the family I came from, my mom probably maxed out around $35,000 a year. My dad, I think, maxed out around 47. And when my income crested 100, I never imagined I could make $100,000 in a year. And then you don't realize your full potential until you get there. And is that similar to, it sounds like you went through a similar process. And now you realize, like, oh my God, like there really is no limit to the amount of income you can make in a year. You just have to find the right system and then work that system. Is that kind of how you think now?
100%. I was talking to my wife about this, and I did my first traditional wholesale deal where I strategically did some marketing and found a discounted opportunity and sold the purchase contract for $10,000 in April 2017. Last year, we did $1.3 million doing that same strategy. Right.
That's amazing.
Five years. And it's been a mind-blowing experience to see that. Last year, that's how much we brought in my wholesaling business, but I have multiple streams of income, and I have multiple rentals, and I bought, cryptocurrencies, and I've bought precious metals, and I've bought rentals, and I'm doing things and studying about things that I never imagined that I would be where I am in 5 years. And last year, my net worth alone, just my net worth, the value of my money I have in my investments, the value of my investments went up by 1.3 million in 1 year.
That's amazing.
It's crazy, from being to a flat zero or negative in net worth 6 years ago to making $1 million a year in net worth. That's not even counting all the money that I'm dumping into vacations and playing. And we're talking about buying $1 million house. Like it kind of makes me sick to think that I'm spending, but I've been able to create wealth. I've been able to create opportunity, but something that's been even more fulfilling than that, right? Because it's not even the money. It's, remember when I said the pain of not feeling like I was worthy, feeling like I wasn't a good dad, wasn't a good provider, wasn't who I wanted to be for my family. I feel like I am that, and then some. Right. But I've also stumbled upon something else that's been even more fulfilling that I've been able to do with my success and my wealth. And that's the coaching. I became a coach in 2018 accidentally. So I'm starting to have all the success. We're approaching the end of 2018. I'm going to make $500,000 that year. And I'm like pinching myself. It's like, how is this even possible? I never imagined just, a couple of years of doing this business that I'd be where I'm at. And I read a self-help journal. A friend invited me to do it. It's called Living Your Best Year Ever by Darren Hardy. And in there, you create 3 big goals for that year. And one of my big goals was a financial goal. And I wanted to generate $1 million in a year. I'm like, that's mind blowing. I never imagined. And in there, it talked about the importance of giving away whatever you wanted to receive, right? That same abundance mindset. If you help others, help will come back to you. And I was like, okay, well, how do I give away $1 million when I don't really have it? Right? Like, how do I do that? I'm trying to take this thing serious. I talked to my wife and it's like, well, why don't I teach them this strategy that I'm using to finding massively discounted properties? I teach them that strategy. I teach them how to turn those deals into cash. And, I'll bring on 10 people. I'll teach them, easily put $1 million in their businesses between the 10 of them. Right. So I started with 10 people at the very, very end of 2018. One of my first students, Scott Dallinger, his first deal in Portland, Oregon, $113,000, quit his corporate job. He's now making like $700,000. And last year he made like $800,000 in the year.
That's amazing.
Right? Amazing. His net worth, I think, went up almost $1 million that year, or this last year as well. Right. Michael McLeish, he texted me in September. So 2.5 years after he became a student, and he knew that was my goal. I told him all, right, this is my goal. Y'all are going to make $1 million from this. And he texted me, he's like, I alone have now made $1 million from what you taught me. Right. Like,
it's rewarding,
right
isn't
there,
it?
Oh, dude, like I'm getting chills. Like I'm just goosebumps, right? Like that is so fulfilling. I tell people this all the time. Your first deal where you make 10, 20, 30 grand, like, it's like, whoa, like it's euphoric. It's life-changing. You see the light at the end of the tunnel. Your second deal, it's like, okay, I can keep doing this. Like it wasn't a fluke, right? Third deal's a lot of work. You don't remember your fourth deal. It's just work. Right. But when you help other people and they do their first deal and they're excited like you were, it's like doing your first deal over and over and over because you know what it means to them. Mm-hmm. Right. And I've built such amazing relationships with my students and I'm so close to so many of them. Like one of them asked me to marry him. So this spring I'm going to go to California and marry one of my students, a couple that I helped, right? He was a fireman. And anyways, it's been an incredible experience, And so since the end of 2018 until now, right, beginning of 2022 or 2022. Yeah. All right, I'm losing my mind here. I've become obsessed with coaching. So I've had to automate my wholesaling business. I had to automate my investing business. So I've had to put people in place. And now I have an acquisition manager who's been with me for 2.5 years. And he generates over $1 million a year himself from his own negotiations. Right. And I have this incredible team and for both businesses, my coaching business and my investing business. And now my main role is to inspire my team and to inspire my students. And I'm constantly focusing on educating myself and growing as a person, growing as a leader. The book I'm reading right now is Martin Luther King Jr.'s autobiography, because I know that I have to become a leader and I have to inspire, and I couldn't think of anyone better to read about. And so, I feel like the journey was super long. I feel like the journey was super hard to get where I'm at, but the journey now and the experience I'm having now is so fulfilling. It is so amazing because I passed that threshold of making money for survival, feeling like there's scarcity, feeling like I'm going to go out of business next year, to I don't have to work anymore, but I work because I'm changing lives and it fills me up. Right.
Yeah,
and
you found your calling. You found your calling. I call that the purpose of wealth, right? The reason you're building the wealth. I think when you're on your way to that first million, you're kind of like, it's a new concept. It's like, oh, I'm going from being broke to being wealthy. And you really are more focused on growing your knowledge and your wisdom and your ability to build money. You don't quite, you're kind of it's a journey, and we do good things. Like I'm sure you did good things along the way on your money. Like you probably supported some orphans, probably supported your church, probably supported some different things, but you're doing that more out of a sense of responsibility, or it's the right thing to do. Now you've transcended that because you've got that wealth and you're like, oh, now I have this money. What else do I do? What else do I do with my life? What else do I do with the money? And you're transcending that and going to this purpose of wealth zone where, I think you're probably at the place, if you haven't hit it yet, where you go, I have a responsibility to build wealth now because I can help people improve their lives, their families. I can make the planet a better place. I can have, I have money for a purpose. And you may still be developing that. You may have already found it, but it's the people I've interviewed on the show. We've done like 75 interviews now. I'd probably say 90% that I've interviewed have not quite found that purpose yet. There's a 10% ratio so far, maybe about 10 of those that I think have really defined what their purpose of wealth is. And so you're one of those, I think. If you haven't fully defined it, you're just right there on the cusp. Yeah. And it's a wonderful place to be, just a passion behind it. I get calls now doing the show. I got one the other day from a gentleman, great guy, great heart, making 50 grand a year in his 50s. And he's at the place you and I were when we were like 25 years old, right? And I think people that are older, if you're listening to this, future millionaires on the show, I want you to hear this. It doesn't matter what your age is. It doesn't matter. Because, here we have Zachary, and he went over a 7-year period from being like virtually like walking a tight line with his finances to making $1 million last year. 1.3 net worth growth. So you got to imagine his net worth had to be a certain number to actually grow by 1.1 million. So you're talking about a multimillionaire here who was able to increase that. And that happened over a 7-year period of time. So if you're in your 50s, you got time. You got time. Believe in yourself, believe in your abilities, and, put the effort in. The process, what I love about it, Zachary, is the process is repeatable. It's not like there's a secret formula. There is a formula, but it's like the same formula and everybody kind of uses it, right? Mm-hmm. And it usually goes through mindset shift. Let's apply a lot of hard work. Let's apply some knowledge. Let's get going, make some moves. Let's take a little bit of risk, learn something new. Maybe you skin your knees up just like you do on the playground a little bit as a kid, but you get back up and you keep playing. You don't stay off the playground. You get back on the playground once you get hurt. And learning about money, I think, is a lot like that. I didn't make all the right decisions. You talked about, that first property you had from that guy. You wish you would have kept it, right? And I would tell you that I did too, man. I'm like, why did I sell that first house? We paid $62,500 for our first house, a $500 a month house payment. And I had like, by the time we moved out of that house 5 years later, I think we might have owed 55 grand on it. And that house now is worth, I think, probably in the $300,000 range, probably renting out for about $1,500 to $2,000 a month at least. And I'm like, I should have kept that thing, man. $500 a month is nothing for a house payment. And I sold my second house. I wish I'd kept that one. That one's probably around 300,000 or 400,000 now. So that's $700,000 in real estate that I should have kept. I could have afforded the house notes on both of those, paid them off early. Actually, the second house we had paid off, and I just sold it and took that capital and paid on the new house that we moved into. But, but we don't always get it right. We just kind of have to get moving in the right direction. So, well, man, go ahead.
I'd love to quickly give an outline that I feel like I followed, because they might hear the story and be like, man, that's a lot. Like, where do I start? Where does my story fit into that? So I'm going to give you an outline. The first thing is identify exactly what you want to accomplish. So I believe one of the fastest ways to wealth is real estate. It's the best place to hold wealth, tax benefits, and everything else that comes with it. I learned that I could find deeply discounted houses and I could pass the opportunity off for a finder's fee. My average finder's fee doing this is $30,000, a little over $30,000. Okay. And you don't need a ton of money to get started. I show you how to do it with just $1,000 on that challenge. We'll give you a link to watch that. But identify exactly what you're trying to do. If you don't want to do anything in real estate, maybe I'm not your guy, but find someone that goes, okay, this is the outline. This is what you do and how you do it to accomplish X, Y, Z, right? And make sure what they can help you accomplish is your goal. The XYZ that they can solve, make sure that that is your goal, what you're trying to accomplish, right? And then hire that guide, find that person that will give you the outline and roll up your sleeves and do the work. I did the exact same thing. After I met Stan and had those properties I was going to make $100,000, I started looking for a mentor. I was a believer at that point. There's a lot of people talking about this. I met a guy named Tom Kroll and Cody Hoffine. They were business partners and they were coaches, and they changed my life. They gave me my outline. I paid $9,000 for the coaching, put most of it on credit cards, and I went to work, right? And then a month and a half later, I made $10,000. By the end of that year, which was like 7-8 months, I made like $115,000, right? And I was off to the races. They gave me the outline, the blueprint. I applied that to my work ethic, and the combination equaled accomplishing the goal. And my goals continue to change and evolve. And I continue to find the guide and the mentor that's done it, accomplished it, and consistently gets the results that I'm looking for other people. And that's who I work with and who I have help with. I have multiple mentors. I have mentors for my YouTube channel. I have mentors who actually mentors my YouTube guy, right? I have I have employees that I hire coaches for them, right? And I don't have to do it all myself anymore, but I still have a mentor that I pay $50,000 every 6 months and 10% of my profits, because he's helping me excel to the next level that I'm working towards, right? I didn't start off that way, but I found a guide that could help me accomplish my goals. And that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people are do-it-yourselfers. I'm a do-it-yourselfer, but you get there a lot faster with a guide or a mentor, and you avoid a lot of the mistakes, a lot of wisdom there. So, and I think that's great advice, Jeremy. And I met Zachary, and let me just remind people, Zachary's 32-year-old multimillionaire, broke 7 years ago, and definitely headed in the right direction, man. I can't wait to see what you're going to do by the time you're 40. I was just crossing the $1 million barrier at 40. And
I'll be fat and bald. I'm just kidding. Hopefully I'm further along.
Maybe with all that spare free time you got with your family, maybe you can fit some workout time in there too. So
I started CrossFit. I can't even extend my bicep right now. It's like brutal.
Yeah. Just advice, like stay healthy, man. Like watch what you eat. And and just keep I'm at 51. I'm working with some high blood pressure issues, and I'm just like, I got to get back out and start getting busy, but just to be disciplined. But hey, how can people find out more about what you're doing, Zachary? I know you got a special for them, something you wanted to give out to them. Where's that at?
Yeah. So if you guys want to watch the 40-day challenge and see what it's like step by step to do what got me to financial success, go to dfdmastery.com. Stands for driving for dollars. So dfdmastery.com/40 and 40. So the number 40 and 40.
Yeah, and we'll put that link in the show notes when the episode comes out. Zach, man, thanks for being on the show, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. I love your story, and I would love to talk to you about doing some referral stuff, getting some people in your zone. I think you got some great resources. I love some of my listeners and my audience to be able to connect with you over the long haul, not just related to this show, but to find your stuff. So, man, have a great 2022.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody.
The Millionaire Choice Show shares the opinions and experiences of people and should not be considered financial advice. Before making your own financial choices, please seek out a registered financial advisor or certified financial planner.